What's up guys, HMK here once again. We're in another Legend of Zelda video. So I don't know if you knew, but the Legend of Zelda has some awesome manga adaptations that are put together by the team of Akira Himekawa, the same duo responsible for the Skyward Sword prequel manga adaptation that you can find in the Legend of Zelda Hyrule Historia. They do some awesome work in fleshing out aspects of certain Zelda games, but at the same time, they condense the events of each game in a maximum of 2 volumes depending on the game. Well, this changed with the Twilight Princess manga, which was an ongoing manga series and was finally completed after 6 years and 11 volumes and 70 chapters. It was crazy. I loved Twilight Princess as a game, especially its story, but the manga took the game to such a wild level. The game's events were adapted and fleshed out to such an interesting and dark degree, it really makes me want this to be the official lore of the game's story. I don't want to spoil too much of what the manga adds, but it incorporates very mature themes such as prejudice, forced upbringings, taking one's life, and severe mental illness. Not to mention, it's pretty gory considering its source material. But I wanted to talk to you what I think is the coolest thing in this manga that I wished was in the games. So, as a quick crash course, let me remind you of a certain event within the Zelda timeline. When the Hero of Time, Link, was able to return to the past after defeating Ganondorf at the end of Ocarina of Time, he was able to convince Zelda and the King of Hyrule using the Triforce of Courage as proof that Ganondorf planned some deadly treason. Thanks to this warning, Ganondorf was put on trial after the events of Ocarina of Time in the Child Timeline and before the events of Twilight Princess, and we all know how that turned out, right? Ganondorf was chosen by the Triforce of Power, thus survived his execution. He slaughtered the Sage of Water in that era and was sent to the Twilight Realm as a last resort. But there are 2 points in this important event that I want to elaborate on. One, other than Link, Zelda, and the King of Hyrule, no one knew of the events of the future of Ocarina of Time and the adult timeline, due to, those events never happening in the child timeline, and the only reason why Zelda and the King of Hyrule knew is because Link told them. So Ganondorf was pretty much executed without the true full knowledge on why. Number 2 is that he gained the Triforce of Power due to the Triforce having a type of constant to it thanks to the events of Ocarina of Time, as Link already having the Triforce of Courage in the Child Timeline despite the events of Ocarina of Time's future not happening in that timeline meant that the Triforce was already broken up, and that Ganondorf, representing the virtue of power the most, was chosen for the Triforce of Power in Twilight Princess. Okay, now that we got this out of the way, check this out. When Ganondorf got executed in the Twilight Princess manga, it played out a bit differently, where during the execution at the Arbiter's grounds, the King of Hyrule at the time was actually present, and that along with getting stabbed through the chest with the Sword of the Sages, sending him to the Twilight Realm was actually always the plan, as banishing criminals there was pretty much the worst type of execution they could be condemned to, as the people of Hyrule literally believed the Twilight Realm to be like hell. That's crazy. The Twilight even stated in the manga that the people of the Light World would send their worst to their realm like some sort of garbage disposal, and that the malice of those criminals negatively impacted the realm, leading to more disdain for the people of the Light Realm, but more on that for another time. It was in this process of Ganondorf being banished to the Twilight Realm that he awakened the Triforce of Power within him. Now, that's not the coolest part that I'm talking about. Fast forward to Volume 7, Chapter 39, The Destiny of the Triforce, where Ganondorf is already back and he actually sits down and has tea with Zelda, whom he awakened after the whole Midna thing, while holed up in Hyrule Castle. It is in this talk between Zelda and Ganondorf that the coolest thing in the manga gets revealed. So, Ganondorf decides to have a civil conversation with Zelda about his past and execution, as well as Zelda's past, being very cryptic that they met before, even though they hadn't in that timeline. Zelda lets slip that the knowledge of the adult timeline is actually recorded in deep dark records within the royal family due to that era's Zelda and King recording their reasoning for Ganondorf's arrest after the events of Ocarina of Time. But then Ganondorf reveals that he became aware, or rather awakened, of what happened to him in a different time, a different universe, a different timeline, and that his victory was robbed from him twofold. In the adult timeline, where he was defeated by the Hero of Time, Link, and the child timeline, where he was stopped before he could act. But how would Ganondorf know about something like that? It would honestly be impossible. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is due to the Triforce. Remember how I said in the game that the Triforce has a type of constant variable to it? Well, Ganondorf reveals that the Triforce actually contains a hive mind collective that transcends space, time, and reality, which makes sense since it's a relic containing the essence of the gods themselves, recording details of events that it is part of and witnesses in any timeline. And that when Ganondorf awakened to the Triforce of Power, he gained all the knowledge of his other self in a time unmade from his own point in time, which only made him incredibly pissed. When I read this, it honestly blew my mind, and it really makes me want something like this in the video games so badly, as that would be an insanely awesome way to tie the games and events of every timeline together. And Nintendo technically already has their foot in that door with this idea, as in the original Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, when it comes to the fate of the Triforce after the events of Ocarina of Time in those respective timelines. And honestly, this is just one of the crazy things that you could find in the Twilight Princess manga, and I definitely recommend reading this if you love Zelda and Twilight Princess. Ganondorf, being aware of his other self's machinations due to the power of the Triforce, transcending space and time, in my opinion, is one of the coolest things, if not the coolest thing I've read in a Zelda manga. But with that being said, I want to know what you guys think. Should the Triforce act this way within the games of The Legend of Zelda? And what did you think about that big revelation from the manga? What's your favorite part of the Twilight Princess manga? Leave your comments, theories, and thoughts in the comment section below, and be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to HMK for more Zelda content every week. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters for help making this video happen. If you want to find out how you can support HMK for just $1 a month, check out my info in the description box below. Alright guys, until the next video, this has been your boy HMK, and I'll check you guys later.